Welcome everyone to the games people play.
Looking for a redirect, but loose in front of the goal.
Does anything in particular stand out? Is there any?
Run it for the end zone for the touchdown.
This is Bernie Corbett saying, play the game well. Welcome everyone to Season 1, Episode 9 of the Games People Play with Bernie Corbett. I remain Bernie Corbett this week as I was last week, and we welcome you back to our home. I think we can truly call it our home. We've planted the flag here now for several weeks at the world-famous Fours Restaurant and Sports Bar, 166 Canal Street in Boston, hard by the TD Garden right across the street. And pleasure to be here once again. Peter Colton and everybody that has assisted us here. Jim, Gino, and the rest of the Eyewitness News team here for all the help that they've given us. And if you're in Boston, please come by the Fours. There's a lot of history here in the Boston sports world and beyond. And once again, voted by Sports Illustrated as the #1 sports bar and restaurant in America. Great to be back here, and long may our run be here at the Fours in Boston. And, well, I guess, I don't know if it was popular demand, but I guess maybe I made the demand of the request that it's about time we got a little bit more local. It's about time I maybe had a chance to interview somebody that's not speaking with an accent, and somebody that has actually been to the Fours Sports Bar and Restaurant, I think, on more than one occasion. And very pleased to have with us as our guest this week on Episode 9 of the Games People Play. We're going to play today with Keith Tkachuk. Keith, welcome to the show. And you are, I believe, ensconced here in COVID-free, hopefully COVID-free St. Louis now, and just chilling, and haven't got back here a little closer to the Fours down in Sandwich across the Sagamore Bridge yet.
No, we're staying in St. Louis this summer, obviously, with a lot going on. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I've been in the Fours a couple of times. Probably haven't been there too many times, but always great to get back to Boston. Great history there, and I love it there.
Indeed. We got to work on, I had a request from one of my friends that said, is Keith's jersey on the wall here at the Fours? We may have to work on that, Keith. I think you're deserving of being up on the Fours Hall of Fame, if you will. I'll see if I can make a couple of phone calls on that one. So,
thanks.
Stay tuned. Keith, well, he needs no introduction, certainly to hockey fans or sports fans, but I'm going to try to do it justice. 18-year NHL career, one of the truly elite American-born players of all time. He's a member of the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. He's one of 5 American-born players with 500-plus goals. He's one of 6 American-born players to score 1,000 points in his career. He's one of only 2 Americans to appear in 4 Olympic Games wearing the USA red, white, and blue. And remarkable consistency as offensively productive and prolific during his career. 8 times 30 goals, twice 40, and back-to-back 50-goal seasons, including the 52 goals 1996-97, which led the NHL. He was the first American to be a leader in goals in the NHL, the first ever American with his 52 goals in 1996-97, a great achievement. And also, we'll get into this a little bit, the old Gordie Howe hat trick. Keith's no stranger. Only the 4th player in NHL history to have 50 goals and 200 penalty minutes in a season. So another distinction of the way he played the game here this week on the Games People Play. Over 1,200 games, 538 goals, 527 assists for 1,065 points. And I'm sure Joel Quenneville and all the guys you played for, including yourself in particular, are proud of the fact that you were a plus 33 for your career. So you didn't need a map to find the defensive zone, as some other guys might have needed that GPS before GPS was invented, Keith. And once again, exhibited as I believe was discussed when you were inducted in 2011 to the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. Great American values, and 5-time NHL All-Star. And, well, I think we've dispensed with all of the achievements. Silver medal in 2002 in his 3rd of his 4 Olympic appearances. And I don't know if I'm going to dispute the fact that when you were inducted in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, you seemed to dwell a little bit on penalty minutes and eating as two two of the Hall of Fames that you thought you were going to get into, but you get into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, so you never know where you might end up.
Yeah, it was a good time. Those are good times playing for the U.S. team, and it's just funny how fast it goes by, Bernie. I just remember yesterday we were hanging out at BU together when I was freshman playing, and all of a sudden now we're grown men and we're getting old.
Absolutely getting older, but hopefully better. I was going to say improving with age. I'd like to think at this point, Keith, 60 is the new 40. That's the math that I'm doing. And you're getting close to 5-0. Book 'em, Dano, 5-0. That's probably the new 30, so you got nothing to worry about. You got the kids to keep you young. We'll talk about that.
The wife keeps me young, Bernie, so she's got me on the go.
It absolutely big part of the equation. And one of the things, Keith, obviously we're part of the BU family. Jack Parker is the godfather of BU hockey, if you will. We share that. As you mentioned, we've known each other since the time that you were a freshman at BU. So we go back at this point, I guess, over 30, somewhere around 3 decades that we have known each other. But one of the things that I wanted to get into here initially is something that you and I are familiar with, but for a national, dare I say it, international audience, is really the perspective of Boston hockey and what hockey means in Boston. I mean, you personified Boston hockey with your roots. Your dad, Boston firefighter, Marine, Vietnam veteran. You grew up right in the Boston area. Your dad's got roots back to Charlestown. You were born in Melrose Wakefield Hospital. Of course, whenever I mention Melrose, Keith, I always say the original hockey town, USA, before Detroit started that foolishness. But you've got very strong local roots. What about the Boston hockey experience? When did you first get on the skates and get up and begin to participate in the game that became such an integral part of your life?
Well, obviously, being a young kid growing up in a great sports town like Boston, I really, really loved the Boston Bruins. And I remember living in East Boston, and my mom got us going, me and my older brother, get out there and get skating. And, I never missed a Boston Bruins game. And I just fell in love with the game of hockey. I mean, I loved all sports. I think it's important. I played all sports. You played football in the fall, hockey kind of overlapped with football, and then baseball in the spring. So it was very active. But to watch the Boston Bruins, I always dreamt of someday playing in the National Hockey League and dreamt of playing for the Boston Bruins. And, having parents that also love sports and being in that Boston area where my parents grew up, we have strong roots there. My whole family's there. It was a strong community, and things have changed, and over the years, how much it's grown, but it's always going to be a great sports town, and kids should be very fortunate to grow up in that area.
And you started, was it, I'm going to guess, probably around 8 years old with organized teams, roughly?
7 or 8 years old.
Yep.
And it just took off from there. You play with your regular town team, then you kind of elevated to that next team where you travel, but it was all in Massachusetts. So it's not like everywhere else in the country where the kids travel all over the country. But yeah, it was great, and just fell in love with it, and things progressed. And, a bunch of years later, 40 years later, we're retired.
Well, you had a taste of the travel we're going to talk about a little bit later with the next generation, as far as how far you had to go to get a game, to find a game and find competition, but not so in Boston. Obviously, hockey hotbed. You mentioned your love for the Bruins, and there was certainly a strong influence, my age, me having about a decade on you, for the big bad Bruins, the 70 Bruins. I remember playing youth hockey in Stoneham, and that was such a strong influence. Your influence, not surprisingly, is about a decade later. The 80 Olympic team had a strong influence on you and your peer group that many elevated themselves all the way to the NHL.
Yeah, that changed the game of hockey for the U.S. For guys like myself and guys across the country. I mean, when the 80 Olympic team did that, obviously, I remember you dreamt of being. One day you went in the net, you thought you were Jim Craig, and then you thought you were Mike Ruzioni scoring the big goal. But that changed the game of hockey for USA Hockey. I mean, every kid all across the country wanted to be in that situation like those guys were. So they were kind of the pillar that started. And I'll never forget that, just to see what happened, obviously following the local guys. At that time, I think I was living in East Boston, so the next town over was Mike Ruzioni. I mean,
right in Winthrop.
Boston and Winthrop are just right next to each other. And being at Santarpio's, I think where Mike's dad used to work, and I think we ate there every Sunday. So it was just incredible, and that when you look back and see what they did was something that is just phenomenal. It's probably one of the best things that ever happened in sports. The biggest upset, and it was a trickle down effect for guys like me.
Indeed, it was for this whole generation that you became part of and so prominent with your success. You played at Malden Catholic. Malden Catholic, for those in our national and international audience, bit of a hockey pedigree, certainly going back to the 70s and great teams that they had, and then into the 80s. And the first time that I saw you play was your junior year. You had a big junior season there. You over 2 points a game. You scored 30 goals, 21-game season. And I was actually doing some games for Boston. I think it was the Boston Cable Neighborhood Network. And they televised some games. And I'm going to give you, here's your first 20-point toss-up question. Who was my color analyst on those games?
Wow.
Somebody that you know, somebody that now has another job in the NHL, played at Boston University. Well, I can give it away and say he coached at Boston University.
David Quinn.
David Quinn was my color man on those Boston Cable Network.
And you guys probably had no stuff to go off, so you're just with the technology and the information that you get on the web nowadays. You guys had nothing. You were probably throwing out names that isn't true.
The only reason I knew how to pronounce your name is I knew you were going to be you. Other than that, we were pretty much flying by the seat of the pants there. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Absolutely. We weren't getting too many notes. We'd go down and talk to. I think your coach was it Malloy?
I had Jim Malloy, who's now passed away.
Yes.
Freshman, sophomore year. Then he retired, and I had another guy. I'm drawing a blank right now. I had 3 different coaches in high school. Then he left.
MC. Yep.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. I mean, I loved it there. It's where I met all my closest friends. At that point, I was living in Medford, Bernie, too.
That's right.
It was. I loved going there. I met still to this day, some of my best friends.
Indeed, of course, the SAC goes there. And land of my birth, South Medford, where I was born at Lawrence Memorial, as a matter of fact. So when I was born, we were living in South Medford. I always said that in the middle of the night, we ran up the Fellsway and we crawled under the electric fence, and we didn't stop running until we got to Stoneham. But
not too far away. Not too far.
No, not too far up the road. That's for sure. But but I remember having the chance to see you play, and I remember Joe McCabe. I think doing a game with you and BC High had some good teams then, obviously over at the old UMass Boston rink. But then I also remember that your senior year was curtailed. You had a pretty serious injury to deal with before you came to BU.
Yeah, I broke my leg, a freak accident against the boards. I just got caught and twisted. So. Yeah, I was limited to maybe 5 or 6 games that year, which was tough because your senior year, you want to, you want to really enjoy that. And, we built, a pretty good team going from junior to senior year. So it was unfortunate. It was too bad, but you know what, got ready and there's nothing you can do about it.
Indeed. And you came the next year to BU, and another connection that we both had. My barber, actually, the first guy to cut my hair was a guy, God rest his soul, Stan Peterson.
Yes, Stan, man.
And Stan had the barbershop in Medford Square. And I can remember going to a 4th of July cookout. My friend that I went to the Giants games with for a long time, the legendary Malden Ron Anderson, was friends with Stan. And we were talking about you, having a beverage and a hot dog and a hamburger. And he said, you're only going to have him for 1 year at BU. He'll make that Olympic team. Gone. He'll be gone. I says, geez, Stan, I hope we have him for more than. He goes, no, he's going to make the Olympic team. He'll be one and done. And good thing I didn't bet him.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. So Stan was seeing things, I think, back in the
day. He was the president and vice president and treasurer of your fan club at the time, as a matter of fact.
All those barbers, they know all the gossip,
Well, you're talking, you're in the chair, And he was the Stan. God bless him. Stan was a great guy, and he turned out to be right. And you had the one season at Boston University, playing for Coach Jack Parker, and winning the Beanpot. You had the opportunity You know, like all BU guys, you're supposed to come to BU and beat BC, win a bean pot, and you did have that experience. Also, epic Hockey East championship game with the great rivalry, another great rivalry that BU had against Maine, and then all the way to the national championship game. As far as the decision to come to Boston University and to play for Jack Parker, what do you remember, Keith, about that process? That certainly wasn't the only school that was knocking on your door.
Well, you know what? You know what? I obviously love BU. And it was down to BU and UNH, I believe. And my parents, no offense to UNH, they were leaning towards BU. They understood that I wanted to be a hockey player. I had a good chance of getting drafted high. And obviously, when you get to play for a coach like Jack Parker. But before this, I was looking over some of the roster that I played with that year. And I don't know how many kids as a freshman would eventually have a chance to play with Sean McEachran and Tony Monte. If you want to be at the next level, you got to play with players that are better than you at that point. And it would have helped me become a better skater playing with them. And I was just looking at the roster. I mean, David Sacco, Dave Tomlinson. Dave Tomlinson, people might not know a lot about him, but he was probably one of the best college hockey players ever to play the game. Yep. This guy was phenomenal. And Eddie Ronan, who won a Stanley Cup, Peter Ahola, Phil Von Stefanelli, another great player, Mark Chris, the captain, Scotty LeChance, my roommate, the Babes, Sullivan. You go down and down the list, Chris McCann. These are guys that, you look at the rosters, you see where you fit in. I knew at the time Joe Sacco was going to leave. Mike Sullivan was graduating. So you obviously want to put yourself in a good situation. And I knew Mike Boyle was probably one of the best conditioning coaches, and my parents were thought that, and I thought that would be, a big boost in my development with all those combinations, and obviously the great, school itself, institution, but BU, it was in the bean pot, and to have a chance to win, why not? It's right down the street. I mean, Medford to, without traffic. I mean, in Boston, traffic. 45 minutes an hour on a Friday night, but it's really only like 6 to 8 miles away from Medford. So it was a no-brainer. And, Jack pushes you. He was great, but he was hard. And, I got to play with some great players, and I'll never forget that one year. We had a great team. We did a lot of great things that year. I think, we wanted to be part of history, the great hockey tradition at BU. We fell short at the end, but a lot of great players and a lot of great teams. It was probably one of the best teams that ever come out of BU.
And once again, you played on the line you add up the NHL games and the points and the success. But that was the first line. You had 40 points there. You 1 year at BU playing with Tony Amonte and Sean McEachran. I know Jack said years later, he always tells a story about sitting at T. Anthony's, and he was looking at the stats in the Globe. And I think you guys were all leading your teams in scoring at the time. And I think a couple of you might have been leading your teams in goals at the time. And Jack just looked up and said, I should have been fired. So, how did he not win? But that is a story in and of itself. I got to ask you just two questions about that year at BU. Is there one memory that stands out in particular, your Beanpot, or is there any particular memory or any particular game that stands out from the year that you spent?
I think, obviously the love-hatred and the tradition of BU, and lost to BC at the beginning of the year. And I'll tell you, Jack was pissed off. And we drove back to BU and that old locker room at Walter Brown, and he got very emotional. And I think after that, because the boys had a big run previous year, and I think it was a little bit of a hangover. And, Jack was very emotional and gave it to us a little bit. And I think after that, we went on, and the next thing is to be able to beat BC in the championship game at the Beanpot was, I know, everybody outside of Boston really doesn't get a grasp for it, but, being a kid going to the Beanpot when you were younger, to be a part of that at the old Boston Garden and to win against your rival, it was incredible. I think it might have been a comeback. I think Tony had 3 goals, and it was just phenomenal. The place was packed, and playing in that building, it's everybody's right on top of you, and it was a dream come true. And that was obviously in the Hockey East finals. Gex scoring in overtime to beat Maine. I mean, it was just a phenomenal year. Great players, great plays, a a lot of awesome, great coach, and just Scotty LeChance being my roommate. Everything was great.
Yeah, Tony had the got off the canvas there. He got TKO'd by Joe Cleary, and then it was goal, 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 hat trick, and an unbelievable comeback in that beanpot.
All the guys were friends. They all played together growing up, like on different youth hockey teams. But when you get on that ice, Billy Garrett and I, boom, right at it. Hines, McInnes, all these. It was a war.
Got to ask you about the one that ESPN has missed so far. When are they going to do a 30 for 30 on the national championship game? I think that's a documentary that's waiting to happen. Keith, you played in a lot of – we're going to talk about it. You played in a lot of hockey games, over 1,000 of the NHL and internationally. But when you think back to that game, I think back to – the day doesn't go by that I don't think about it in one context or another, but the triple overtime game that just took on a life of its own against Northern Michigan. Whenever I talk to guys, I'm curious, what comes to your mind immediately when you think about it?
Well, looking back at it, before I get into the disappointment, I think, if you weren't a hockey fan and you watched that game, whether it was on television or if you were there, you had to leave that game being a hockey fan because it was the most exciting, bizarre, emotional, disappointing game that you could ever see or ever play. I mean, I think we were up 3-0 to start.
Yep. Down 7-4.
And then it was 7-4. And we scored third period or late goals just to get to overtime. And, and our best player at the time, Sean McGeckran, had a chance to win. It was unfortunate. It felt like a bad bounce. I don't know how many overtimes, 3 overtimes, if I'm correct, right?
Yep. Triple overtime.
It was a long game. I mean, it was an outright shootout. And to have, we lost to a team that was an older team that had good players, really good players. But, that's one you wish you had back because with the talent we had, there was no question we felt like we were the better team. And it just wasn't meant to be that night. You got to tip your hat to them. And it was disappointing to get all the way there and you're 1 goal away. Next goal wins. And it's like when you're a kid, you want to, be a part of something like that. And, but it wasn't meant to be. And I think after that game, everybody left. It was like, but
that's right.
That's a credit to Jack and the program because you go to college, obviously, to get an education because you can't rely on hockey. But also, if you're a hockey player drafted, you're going there to develop to go to your dream come true NHL. And Jack did a great job of preparing you for that next level. And he did such a good job, unfortunately, that I think some guys graduated, of course, but there was a lot of guys underclassmen that turned pro and ended up having a long career.
No, indeed the case. And I said to Jack, the first thing that I think I said, we got back to the hotel in Washington in 2009. I said, Coach, we both hung around long enough to see everything come full circle because we got this one tonight in Washington. We didn't get the one in St. Paul. And good for Jack that he had that on his resume, that he had, he had this one from 2009. Thank God for that for his career.
Absolutely. He deserves it. It's tough everybody thinks BU or BC and all these schools should win every year, but the tough part is Jack and then David Quinn and Albie have to figure out there's so many players that are leaving so early, and so you really don't get that 4-year player who is an elite superstar player. They rarely ever stick around because people want to go to BU to become a pro hockey player, and that's part of the problems that you run into.
Indeed the case. I got to ask you, one guy that you spent a considerable amount of time with in the NHL from that game, Dallas Drake. Did he bring that up once in a while, or did he say, I better leave it alone because this guy could kill me?
Yeah, and Daddy Drake he would never, we become best buddies and our wives, best friends. And, I played a long time with him. And, unless I was really bugging him, then he might throw that in there. But he was kind. He never really brought it up.
Nice.
We still laugh about it, and I know he still keeps in touch with all of his teammates. But, yeah, if you're going to lose to somebody now, I'm looking back, he's one of my buddies who I love playing with, and he'd do anything for me.
Well, BU was supposed to be going to Northern Michigan in October, and that no non-conference games. And they were actually having a 30th anniversary during that series, and another victim of COVID that was canceled, unfortunately. but not going to be able to make that trip out to Northern Michigan. You mentioned about the Olympic team and the opportunity to try out for the Olympic team. I guess you've already alluded to the fact that it was somewhat unexpected that you went out there and established yourself and got a spot on the 92 Albertville team. What about that experience, Keith?
You know what? It was, I don't know what happened. I think the year playing with BU helped me so much that when I went to the tryouts, I did better than I thought. And I think better than a lot of people thought. And it was one of those where it was weird because they had a bunch of guys and you traveled all year, and there were some guys bringing in, some guys getting cut. And, after a couple of weeks, you stick around, you're sticking around, you stick around. Then by the time you get to the new year, January, you're 1 month away from the Olympics, and you're thinking, oh man, this would be tough if you get cut now. But once I got past that new year, and lucky enough to make that team, it was just an incredible experience to be at a beautiful place like Albertville. Like it was built into the mountains, the rink, the lodges where we stayed. It was just phenomenal setting, and to be able to play and just stay at the, with all the other athletes and see what everybody's, all the other athletes are doing, and being a part of something special. And you're still 19 years old. You're still wet behind the ears, or just turned 19, I think. I don't even know what it was. And it was crazy. I mean, it was a great experience. It's something I'll never forget. And we had a good run there for a while. I think we finished in fourth place. We lost to the Russians in the semifinals, who were phenomenal. So it was a heck of a run, but came up short.
And then it was on to the NHL. At that point, you'd been first round selection, the 1990 NHL draft for the Winnipeg Jets. Distant Winnipeg for the boy from Boston. What about your initial impressions of going out there to the Great Plains of Manitoba to start your professional career there, eh?
First of all, Bernie, like many Americans and many people from Boston, geography is, not important north of that border. So we didn't even know what Winnipeg was. And now, my mom actually cried when I got drafted by Winnipeg, not happy for me. She's like, oh my God, where is Winnipeg? Nobody knows where it is. But it worked out well. I think I flew back with the group in the Olympics. Let's just say it was on a Sunday or whatever. I don't even know what day. We flew home. I think everybody came over the house. We had a party, and I had to fly out the next day. Now, Bernie, I'm going to Winnipeg. I have no idea what Winnipeg is. My dad's got to go to maybe a loan shark or something and give me $1,000 or something, and get a loan.
Canadian or American?
American, but gives me $1,000. I didn't have a credit card back then. I didn't have a bank card. It was here's $1,000, and I got to wait till I get, you gave you a signing bonus, but that it's not like it is now, direct deposit and all this stuff. So, it's just, I don't know, it was weird. And I just flew up, met the team on the road, and I think we played a couple games on the road. And then I flew out after one game back to Winnipeg on a charter at night. And I don't know, it just happened so quickly. I'm like, what the hell happened? I remember eating at T. Anthony's, a year ago. Now I'm, I don't know, in a place where I'm playing the NHL against guys I admired growing up. And now look at it. So quickly.
Yeah, just really absolutely almost a surreal experience. You played very quickly. You played your first game, first of over 1,000, February 28th, 1992 against Vancouver. You didn't waste any time. What's it, in Winnipeg?
No, it was in Vancouver, but they were a big team.
They were what?
Big team.
Oh, really? They were a big physical team.
Yes.
As far as your first experience, you didn't waste any time. You got an assistant. You get your first helper anyway. You get your first point, your first game. You didn't waste any time. And you also had a chance to play in your first Stanley Cup playoffs that spring. What about that? Once again, everybody talks about it, and who better than you to ask? Hockey, regular season hockey, playoff hockey. All of a sudden, you get a little bit of a taste, thrown into the fire regular season. Now you get thrown in with Winnipeg into the Stanley Cup playoffs that year.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Winnipeg fans were incredible. They did this thing called a whiteout. It was an old building. It was just, you can hear the place going crazy before you even went out in warm-ups. I mean, it's just, it's not like the NHL rinks nowadays where they have all this luxury seating and the locker rooms are, state of the art. It wasn't like that. So you can hear everything from the locker room, and to be able to just be thrown into the fire. You're not really thinking, Bernie. You just go out and play, and you're energized by the crowd. It was there's nothing better than any sport than Stanley Cup playoffs. Nothing comes even close.
You got 3 playoff goals in that in your first series. Mentioned about Great Old Barn, and I didn't mention it, I guess, but when you think of Great Old Barns, with all due respect, I love Agganis Arena, but you got to play in Walter Brown with the low tin roof there, and boy, I think that was worth at least a goal a game. Wasn't it fun when that place rocked?
That place was jammed, and you had the band, you had the fans, and the one end you had where the media is, and then the other end you had the BU Friends of BU club. It was old school. In the locker room was just a nice little setup, small, not like the state-of-the-art facilities now, but it was. You felt important when you walked into that rink, when you walked into that locker room, when you just you're for the first time, and I miss those days.
Began to establish yourself the second year. You got over 50 points. You got 28 goals. Had a 12-game scoring streak, which put you among the elite and put you in the record books there for quite an accomplishment in your first full season. And then by the third year, at the age of 21, they put the C on the sweater there. Now, all of a sudden, I'm 21 and just a couple of years removed from the Olympics and college and experience. Captain of the team. What about being the captain of an NHL team at 21 and some of the responsibility that now entailed?
Yeah, it was a huge honor. It really was. I mean, you're looking back at it, it's probably too young to get it. I think it's, big responsibility when you're just cutting you're just getting your feet wet, basically. It's only the third year, and, you have a lot of older guys that have been playing a long time. You don't want to step on any toes. You don't want to, you have to concentrate on your own game to make sure you're doing the right things, leading on the ice, and you're still young. And, but it was, an experience that I'll never forget, and I'll cherish every moment being a captain of the NHL team. It was great to look down and how fast it happened, and, remember being a kid, and that's why I love seeing the kids in the stands. I was once one of those kids, and, now I got to live my dream of being an NHL player, and there's not a better job than
Didn't bother you much, though. You had it was your first year to break 40. You had 41 goals. You led the team. Led the team in points with 81. 22 power play goals that year, and that was one of the aspects of the game where you really began to establish yourself, your style of play. Prototype power forward, but also being able to set up shop, if you will, and find the sweet spot on the power play. And you certainly did that and would do that for almost a couple of decades from that point, but seemed to really settle into that role in terms of a comfort zone.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got to play with good players. And obviously when you're on the power play, you got guys like Phil Housley and Solani, and, the puck's going to get to the net eventually, so why not be there? And that's what I tell the kids all growing up, hey, get around the net. It's not a lot of people want to do it. You got to pay the price to do it. And sometimes they might hit you and go in. It's just, they look like easy goals, but I call them the hard goals. You got to pay the price to be around there. And, I was fortunate to be in the power play and play with some great players.
Yeah, your first All-Star game the next year, but then some labor strife that hit the NHL at that point, 94-95 season. And I think you were back for the alumni game that year against the 95 team. Do you remember that, coming back for the they had
Greersy, and was Greersy there? And
with Mike Greer, and it became almost an NHL All-Star team playing the varsity that would win the national championship. And that game got a little contentious, as I remember. And I remember I was behind the bench. I put a nice suit on, and Peter Brown and I think was standing behind the alumni bench. And Jack wasn't too happy by the end of that. That got a little competitive. Not surprising when you got the guy from Somerville there.
Who won? I can't remember.
I think that the alumni won, as a matter of fact, and Jack was not happy about it.
Jack would be pissed off losing a 5 year. Anybody. But that was fun. We had a good time that night. I remember that. I had a blast.
Absolutely. Yeah, it indeed, and that was obviously the first of a couple of labor disputes that the NHL had that you that you played through. Your next season, to say it was a rather eventful, I think 95, 96 is an understatement. Back in the playoffs, first time in 3 years for Winnipeg that year, and it was your first year to hit the true milestone for goal scorers in the NHL. You got 50. You came just short of 100 with 98 points. You got 20 on the power play, 6 game winners. And at the start of that season, as a restricted free agent, you almost, what would LeBron say? You almost took your talents to the Windy City there. Tell us about that experience with Chicago, the offer sheet, and your near departure from north of the border.
Yeah, it was obviously in a contract. I mean, we couldn't come to an agreement, and I was a free agent. And I actually flew to Chicago, I believe, twice that because once your July 1st hits, you're a free agent. And you can get an offer sheet or whatever. But yeah, I actually went to Chicago twice. The first time, that's the first time I met Bill Wirtz.
Bill Wirtz, the owner of the Blackhawks.
At his house, and it was just me and my agent, Bob Murray, a Boston BU guy.
BU defenseman, yep.
And we met with Bill Wirtz and, his cronies, and Bill was an interesting guy. And he's a guy that I wouldn't want to mess with. And I'm talking this guy's family back in Prohibition days, and you could just tell he had that nose for a boxer. And couldn't come to an agreement. Then about a month later, I think they offered me an offer sheet, and Winnipeg matched the next day. I flew back, and I don't think the fans were too happy, and people were happy, but I mean, it was an offer sheet. I had to sign it, and it was Winnipeg matched. We moved on, and that year was tough at the beginning because I missed all the training camps. So it took me a while to get going, but once things got going, we had a decent year, and then unfortunately down the road, obviously we had to leave.
You had you lost the C to Chris King. You did get it back later on, and in terms of the offer sheet, I did my homework here for that 1 year. You were right there with Gretzky and Messier as the highest paid players in the league. All of a sudden, you were part of the nouveau reach of the NHL for that one season.
I think it was $6 million that year. It was kind of funny. It was weird. It just. Back then, you pull a lot of money, but back then it was, felt weird. It did, it's, I'll take it.
I hope you paid your dad back the $1,000, the grand that he threw you when you went to Winnipeg for the first time with no credit card.
I think the VIG was already adding up to about $6 million, so I broke even.
That's right. And that was about even. I think that balanced itself out, and, you had also that year. What do you remember? A playoff series. Detroit was had the regular season best record in the NHL. Great Detroit team, and you had a battle with them. 6-game series. You took them to 6.
Yeah,
what do you remember about that series?
Well, I remember our goalie Nikolai Havibulin was unbelievable in Game 5. I don't know how many shots he stopped, but got us back to Game 6. It was incredible, and I think that was basically our last game
right
ever in that building, which was sad because there's a lot of good people that love the Jets, and I'm happy the Jets have a team back now, and it's a great place to play. I'll always remember it there, and it was just sad, but things happen. You have to move on, and we went to nice warm Arizona.
Indeed, big departure there, and. You led the team. You mentioned that was the swan song in Winnipeg. You led the team on a final lap around that old barn, that old Winnipeg arena, and I'm sure you're probably emotional just thinking about that 25 years later, what that was like, a real bittersweet experience.
Yeah, I mean, you develop friendships, relationships, and you cement, that's your home for the time being. And it was a very emotional crowd. A lot of people who were devastated that the team moved, and it was sad. It was sad that, stuff happened where, the economy and the Canadian dollar and an opportunity in the U.S. where it was growing a lot bigger. And, there was a lot of passionate fans that lost their team, and it was frustrating for them, but it was emotional skating around, seeing everybody sad.
And then in the fall of 96, a signature moment for you, for USA Hockey, the fact that no less than 16 members of that team are in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. And talking about the World Cup of Hockey in 1996 and that experience. And once again, I, as a disclaimer, I wasn't stalking Keith, but I can remember seeing you at Madison Square Garden. I had the press pass, and I just went down after warm-ups. You were coming up there. I said, "Hey, Keith, how you doing?" You looked up and said, Bernie, you're everywhere. Why should I be surprised, you know? But I think maybe I was Glenn Close for you in the natural because you did get the game winner against the Russians that night.
Wow, but first of all, playing in front of Madison Square Garden is unbelievable. And then to be able to represent your country for that team, you know, where you're playing with a bunch of other great American hockey players that are superstars in the NHL, and to go through what we went through was phenomenal. And, you know, that was another great experience to help you, you know, develop as a player, to be able to, I mean, that was to win 2 out of 3 games, and, you know, the second and third game in Montreal was phenomenal.
You played for Ron Wilson was the head coach, and the assistant coach, and battling cancer at the time. Great portrait and courage.
He was actually
John Conniff.
Johnny Conniff.
With John Conniff.
He was battling cancer in the '02 Olympics.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
But
that he,
unbelievable guy, tough as nails. I had him in the World Juniors. Straightforward, no nonsense guy. Great, tough son of a bitch.
Yep. One of the toughest.
Oh, he was. I mean, I've never seen Johnny play, but you know, when Johnny spoke, he had that raspy voice, and you know, he was one guy you didn't want to piss off, Bernie. But he was an awesome guy. He loved his Boston guys too. He loved it.
And there were plenty on that '96 team, just the BU guys with you and Tony and Geck, Sean McGeckran, and of course Scotty Young. Ron Wilson as the head coach. You had an opportunity. You played for a lot of coaches. Ron Wilson, was he the, you know, horses for courses, as we say at the track? Was he the right guy to take that team home in '96?
Yeah, he's a great motivator. He had fun with it. He was sarcastic, but you know, he made you want to go through a wall. You know, the preparations for the games and the videos, and you know how much he loved, you know, being part of USA Hockey. And you know, we had an opportunity to do something that hasn't been done. You know, winning, you know, against an elite team since the '80 Olympics beat Russia. You know, it was always Canada, the best players in the world. And, you know, I think that team, along with the 1980 team who helped me start my career, I got to believe we helped the 96 team help that next generation of players want to become, you know, players that made a difference.
Indeed, you made a difference, and winning in Montreal. And you played, I think, was with Guerin and Modano most of the time. Yeah. Not a bad line, you know.
Yeah, me and Billy would run around, and Mike would hold the puck, and you know, be that finesse guy. And he was probably just shaking his head how many scrums he had to go into. And that's another thing. We won because we had a lot of meat and potatoes besides the elite players. I mean, we had, you know, me and Billy would run around. You had the Hatcher brothers on defense. You had Adam Deadmars, Joel Otto, you know, Johnny LeClaire. So you had some, you know, muscle and something that, you know, might have been lacking over the years for USA. And we had put great.
And that final series, the first game in Philadelphia, the 4-3 loss, the Yzerman goal. Yeah. Where was replay that? Because it pretty clearly was offside, but now you're down a game.
You shouldn't need replay on that one.
Yeah, should have been to the naked eye, right?
That's what made it. That's what made it even better. Being down 1-0 in a 2 out of 3 series, and you have to go to Canada. Nobody gave us a chance. Nobody. To win that game and force a game 3 and to go through what happened there was it was great. Place was crazy, walking from the hotel to the rink, which was right next door. I think we stayed at the Chateau Champlain, and the rink's right next door. I'm telling you, I think me, Billy, and Dougie Wade walked over together, a couple of guys. I think we almost got into a couple of fights. There was people already out there going crazy. Then after the game, silence. Nobody around. It was our town.
The sound of silence. Not even John Beliveau could have got you into a bar at that point. That's right. And just the epic ending. And as I've said to Tony Amonte and Mike Eruzione, you put them in the same room. If you're going to win a really big game, you need a Boston Italian guy that went to BU if you're going to get a big goal,
Absolutely.
And Tony delivered that one.
Yeah, he did. Tony, yeah, he's just all over pucks, can score, can shoot, went to the areas, and he's hungry. I mean, that was a huge goal. I mean, Tony, he's emotional. He goes crazy after he scores. I mean, Tony's a great guy, great fun guy to play with, and just a phenomenal guy.
I went back and took a look here this week and getting ready to talk and refresh my memory, and the physical element of the game. You talked about, I saw you quoted, we outfought, we outscored, we out-hustled Canada. There's no denying any of that. But it was, if you want a war, we're going to give you a war. And a couple of plays in particular, were you a couple of tets that you had with Claude Lemieux and with Adam Foote over the course of that series. And I'm listening to the Canadian announcers, and they're talking about as if, there's a capital crime being committed. And I'm thinking, was this the same country that Bobby Clark took Kolomoff out in '72? I said, this stuff wasn't even on the radar screen here,
If anybody watches those games, it's any kids watching it who are playing now. This is a perfect example to show them you can't do this, you can't do that. They had Lindros, they had Foote, Lemieux, Shanahan. They had some big tough guys, but the rules were crazy. The sticks, the fights, the cheap shots. I mean, it was what it is, and those refs must have been shaking their head, but it was great for the league. It was great to promote hockey, and it was great for international play. U.S. versus Canada, the best versus the best, and it was a must-watch TV series.
Yep. And trust me, T's Pub was rocking that night too.
Good.
I was there. I think it was well after closing, Keith, with Steve DeMarco, the proprietor, and I seem to recall being out back with Steve toasting your club, USA.
I love it.
Yeah. USA. Your strength and conditioning coach was not too far behind either with Mr. Boyle, as a matter of fact.
I love it.
Festive evening. The place went absolutely crazy, as you can imagine. And, it might have been maybe a good omen that you got out of Canada and went to Phoenix after what happened in the Canada Cup. You were now established for that first season. It was just kind of a crazy, cosmic, karmic thing. And it's now completely different atmosphere. Winnipeg, the Plains of Manitoba, hockey hotbed. What about bringing hockey to Phoenix and bringing hockey to the desert now for the first time?
Bernie just did things on the fly. It's amazing how quickly they got that whole process done, because you were just thrown into it. You fly there, and after the season, you look for a place to live. I mean, the rink wasn't a rink that was built for hockey. You had to build locker rooms. They had to tweak some things, and the most important thing is you had to build a staff in Arizona or Phoenix at the time, downtown, just to sell tickets. And you had to do a lot of work, because you had there wasn't a lot of people that knew a lot about hockey, except for the transplants from Michigan or up north. So we had to do a lot as players, as an organization, to go out and sell the game, be around town, do this and do that. So besides playing hockey, the most important thing, you had to go out and develop relationships, kind of sell the game a little, teach people over the game. And, it was just happened like this, and I thought things went well. We had some good teams, and anytime you have a guy like Jeremy Roenick to sell the game, he was he touched a lot of people in a positive way, where he would interact with fans and kids, and it was a really trickle-down effect for all of us to build the game and for these people to learn the game. And 20 years later, now you got a kid from Arizona who's a superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge part of hockey being established. I think the most misused phrase now, when people talk about non-traditional hockey areas, there aren't any anymore.
It's incredible. You watch in 15 years, you'll see, or 20 years, you'll see a a top-notch kid, Vegas born, getting drafted. Yep. I mean, Florida, California, Texas, Missouri. We had 5 first-rounders in the 2016 NHL draft. Who would have thought? I know when I was a kid coming from Boston, if we ever played against a team from St. Louis back then, it'd be point night.
That's right.
Now hockey's grown, and the NHL, it's not just Massachusetts, Michigan, and Minnesota anymore. It's everywhere.
You had your career best year with your 52 goals that first year, and got an opportunity to play in the All-Star game, and had great success. Subsequently played in the All-Star game the next couple of years, and some injuries did slow you down at the end of your tenure in Phoenix, and that gave you the opportunity. You were traded for 3 players and a first-round pick, pretty heavy tariff, to bring you to the town that would become your adopted home in St. Louis. Even had a chance to reunite with Dallas Drake. It was crazy how Dallas Drake kept coming back to you after Northern Michigan in 1991. But as far as the trade to being uprooted now after establishing yourself out in the desert, what about coming to St. Louis and it's always traumatic for family and so forth, but your thoughts initially about coming to St. Louis?
Well, it was a little, it's tough because it was your first trade. Chantal, my wife, was emotional. We just had, we have 2 boys at the time, and going to a place where she wasn't very familiar. We just built a house, and, you look back and you think, everything is where you were, but, this is where the kids grew up, and we didn't know a lot about St. Louis. I've heard a lot of good things about it. That a lot of guys stay here, and it's a really, really strong alumni, and it's a great place to live and raise a family. And once we got to know people, got settled in, and obviously it was a great organization, a great opportunity on some good teams here, and we just fell in love with it, and we haven't left. I mean, I love it here. I really do. It's just, I live 20 minutes west of St. Louis downtown, and play my golf every day, Bernie. Got to play in front of great crowds here, and it's a great sports town with the Cardinals, and at the time the Rams were here too. And and what we did last year was, as an organization, was awesome. I know it was tough for you beating the Bruins, but this is really fun. The weather doesn't get too bad here, and the school system's great, and you go and play for a blue-collar team like the St. Louis Blues, and they love that, the fans.
Indeed. And your time in St. Louis for over the next 5 years, I remember at the beginning of your time, I showed up and stalked you again. I was out there if you remember, at the opening of the Western Conference Finals. I remember speaking to you before with Colorado, and you warned me. I said I was a guest at Drury. And you said, did Drury give you a pass to come down afterwards? I said, yeah, he did. And he says, well, if he didn't, I'm going to beat him up on the ice. So that's when I know who my friends are, Keith, and I'd want you right behind me no matter what. I want you in the foxhole. You remember that?
That was a tough, man, Drew. Drew got the better of us that
series, yep.
Way to lose. You get that far, and, they had a heck of a team, though, didn't they?
Oh, it was just unbelievable.
Both teams. I mean, we just –
yeah.
They were all tight games, really was.
At that Western Conference, then you're looking at Detroit and Colorado and St. Louis, and just remarkable talent, the depth of the talent.
The same teams every year: Dallas, St. Louis, Detroit, and Colorado. I mean, you got to play Detroit. Detroit was some of the best teams ever. I wish they were in the Eastern Conference back then.
Yeah, exactly. Move them out, and you had at the end of your time. Once again, you had some injury issues during the end of the time in St. Louis, and it was a quick stop in Atlanta, and then fortunately you had the opportunity. Once again, it was kind of good karma to come full circle and to come back to St. Louis, and really, I think it was really one of those things that was meant to be, that you got a chance to come back to St. Louis, and you achieved all your milestones in St. Louis in terms of your 500th goal. You're the 4th American to have accomplished that, 41st overall in the history of the NHL. Also, your 1,000th point as the 6th American, 72nd overall, and played, once again, I'm sure the emotions come back to you, played your final game with St. Louis on April 9th, 2010. Your thoughts about being fortunate enough to come back to St. Louis and how things have transpired over the decade of you building the roots for your family there and being as settled down as you have.
Yeah, I mean, that's important, obviously. Like I said, my family loved it here. But, at that point, I was done with my contract. I was going to be unrestricted in the year, and they felt they could get something for me to go to Atlanta. Had a taste down there. Didn't work out. I got to come back and finish my career. And what the organization did for me, my last game when I announced my retirement right before the last home game, was an unbelievable tribute, and have my kids on the ice, and a lot of sweat and hard work and a lot of great memories playing hockey for the Blue Note, and be able to put that jersey on every night was something special to celebrate with the fans. And it happens. You get old, and it's you got to make decisions, but I wanted to settle down here in St. Louis and spend time with the kids and get their hockey rolling and all their sports and be around them as much as possible. Because as hockey players, we miss a lot, Bernie. We're on the road. We're
growing up. Yeah.
Some pretty big holidays. Fortunately, you're home for Christmas, but at that time you're only home for 2 days. So, there's a lot of travel, especially playing in the Western Conference. It's not like that easy conference, the Eastern Conference. Where, New York, you're home in Boston. It's just travel. It's it's a tough grind out here.
Indeed. And that going back and taking a look at that ceremony, you were downright prophetic with many of the things that you addressed in your final soliloquy there to the St. Louis fans. You said, "I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life," which I think is a pretty safe bet right now. You also said that this team is going to win a cup, and you were about a decade ahead with that, but that happened. And your son Matthew, when he was asked to comment, do you remember what he said when he was asked to comment in that ceremony?
It's about scoring goals. He's really big and something like that.
That's right. His comment when they put the microphone in front of him about, what do you think about your dad? He said, he's huge and he's in front of the net.
That's great.
So perfect. It was perfect. And, once again, it led to the opportunity, the fact that you had planted the roots there to develop and a youth hockey program. You mentioned earlier the 6 first rounders: Clayton Keller, Logan Brown, Luke Kunin, Trent Frederick, and then the 2 guys with the last name Tkachuk. I mean, what about? I mean, is it in the water there? Did you change the fluoride mix in the water that these kids were drinking? Just give us a little perspective about what the basis was for that and how you built it, what you had for facilities and so forth. Obviously, in terms of coaching, you had the advantage of not only yourself, but several NHL guys. But still, it's just off the charts to think of 6 guys from that program that you were part of in terms of developing, becoming first rounders and becoming established NHL players.
Yeah, it was, a lot of work started before we got in there. There's a lot of guys that's, like I said, played in St. Louis State here, got involved with the youth hockey program and started building it. And we came in and, the guys like, Rod Ramage, who played a long time, Basil McRae, Al McInnes, Jeff Brown, Kelly Chase. So we had a lot of guys that put a lot of time in, that 96, 97, and 98 birthday, the 3 years in a row, there's some pretty good players and pretty good teams. And, we spent a lot of time with them. The kids were driven. We had both boys and girls playing on the boys team, and it was fun. We had to do a lot of travel. It's not like Boston or Massachusetts, right, where you have a lot of rinks and you have multiple teams. So we would have to go to tournaments in Michigan, Detroit, or drive to Chicago, or go to maybe fly to Toronto. So it was a big commitment on the families, but, it wasn't many rinks here, so you're limited on, ice. I think, what we did in that program, what we did developing kids and the way the Blues are in the community and the way the Blues winning last year, we're starting to build a lot more rinks. And I think you're going to see a lot more, a wave of that next wave coming through. And, it was great that the kids play in the NHL, but it's important for me to develop and help these kids live their dream. And some of them played junior hockey. Some of them went on to college. And that was more, it it was a bigger deal for me to do that for these kids who, a lot of these parents don't have a lot of money. Kids are playing Division I hockey, full scholarship players, getting an education and doing something after that. So it was a great experience and great hanging around with the parents. Some good, some bad, but
Right.
that's everywhere though. So you got to put your foot down there. But that was fun, and to see these kids succeed right now. I think last night Matthew scored, Luke Cunnin scored, and Clayton Keller scored. So
Right, that's right. Keller got one last night too.
And, one Canadian junior hockey player, one BU boy, and one Wisconsin boy. So,
Yep, and once again, casting Keith Tkachuk as Nostradamus and predicting the future. And I remember we were in a bar in Ann Arbor. BU was out there in 2013. Yeah. And I can remember we were sitting and we were having a beverage, and you gave me the rundown. You told me, you're probably going to get Brady. I think Matthews, I don't know, he might be a major junior guy. But wait till you see Clayton Keller. You went through the whole list and you talked about Frederick going to Wisconsin. And I'm like, my jaw dropped. I said, all these guys in the program, in this one program is just amazing. And as you said, it hasn't stopped. I mean, it's going to continue. Look to St. Louis now as another hockey hotbed to produce talent.
Yeah, I mean, we're blessed, that these kids want to put the work in, and it's fun watching these kids live their dream and signing big contracts and get to play in the NHL. And they were just, I feel like it was just yesterday, and some go to college, some go to major junior, but you ultimately, want to see these kids succeed. And it's been a lot of fun as a fan. I mean, you coach them, but I'm a fan of these kids, and, you want to more kids get a chance to live their dream. And, I miss having my kids around too. That's only bad.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You stay in touch with them now. And I think I saw you with another Terrier. You were on Ryan Whitney's program, and you talked about occasionally you might be at the game if things aren't going well. You could just now check out. I'm at Matthew's game. I'll check Brady on the phone now. I mean, not too many.
Hey, that's it. Sometimes you just get like, hey, what's up? That's what the phone's for. That's what we got this.
Absolutely. Technology. Yeah. I know that you have instilled in your kids and brought them up, I guess, for lack of a better term. And, all roads in hockey, when a couple of hockey guys are talking, all roads lead back to Slapshot, right? I don't think we can deny that. But you have raised these guys with a real understanding and an ethic of old-time hockey in terms of playing hard, tough, maybe a little bit on the edge, similar to their dad. And I think it's a breath of fresh air to see the way that these guys play, because it does kind of bring you back a little bit to some of those old-time hockey values, if you will. And I think you've certainly made an effort in the way that you've brought these guys along and developed them.
I appreciate that. I mean, they like to go out and stir things up. I think it's important to be more than a one-dimensional player, and I like the fact that they're willing to stick up for teammates and get their nose dirty. And I think that's just a product of having a dad that's grown up in the city of Boston and learning stuff as you go on the streets and have a little street sense. So I think it's important to be more than one-dimensional, and you have to try to help your team, be an impact player and do different things a night. And if it's not happening scoring, you have to be engaged, and I think that's important.
And as long as there is a physical element, although, we could talk forever about the rules, the way that the rules changed or the way that the rules were interpreted differently. The rules were always there, but, they were just kind of a blind eye to a lot of them. But the way that changed in 2005, and certainly a different, and you still had 5 years left in your career from kind of that demarcation line.
It's so fast right now. It's so much fun. These guys are so skilled. They're more skilled than it ever was. And McDavid skates faster than some cars.
He does. They try to keep up with him. And but I'm sure that if you needed to, or if I ever needed to show a kid, how it was or what it's all about, as long as there's a physical element to the game of hockey and there's an opportunity to establish a physical presence, which in some cases can take pressure off of more skilled teammates, I would say look no further than, pop in that tape of you obliterating Lindros in that 96 World Cup, or going toe-to-toe with Lemieux to say, it's still part of the game. And when it gets to, you want a war, we'll give you a war. That's still part of it. And you see that when it becomes the postseason, whether it's May or now it's in August, you're going to see that in the postseason.
Yeah, it's crazy thinking about August. But yeah, I mean, you see what the games are right now. There's guys sticking their nose in it, and it's getting physical. I mean, there's some hard-hitting games, and as long as you do it the right way, and you're doing it for one thing to help out your team, and but the league has done a great job of cracking down on some headshots and some different things. So guys are more aware, and it's a great game. The offense is ridiculous, and the speed. It's a fun game to watch, and the NHL has done an excellent job with this whole bubble thing compared to the other sports. You got to give
absolutely
really the league, the staff, the players, and the people that are working at the hotels, the rinks, and the community. It's so much. What could be better? Watching hockey all day. It's unfortunate with the situation we're in with the pandemic, but things will get better hopefully soon, and we can have hockey scheduled at the right time of the year. But it's fun watching hockey right now.
You got two kids right now that are playing north of the border, and at the present time, obviously in Calgary and Ottawa. And it's amazing. I think if you took somebody out of if somebody was with Ted Williams in the cryogenics right now, and all of a sudden you in the deep freeze, and all of a sudden you thawed him out. No Canadian team has won since 1993. You got two kids that are playing north of the border. My goodness, Keith, think about the celebration when a Canadian team finally breaks through, and maybe it'll be one of your kids. That celebration I'd be a little afraid. I mean, that celebration may never end, whether it's Ottawa or Winnipeg or Calgary or Edmonton or Toronto or wherever it happens to be.
Yeah, it's strange how that happens. And, I don't know. I think Edmonton might have been the last team in the final. I can't remember, but yeah, when it happens, it's going to be crazy. But there's the parity in the league is, gives everybody. Obviously, Ottawa's in transition. Being a lot of youth, in their lineup, but Calgary has a chance. Hopefully they can get by Winnipeg, but Toronto's got some elite players. Montreal's got a really solid goaltender. So eventually, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Eventually, hopefully, it'll be with one of your boys and bringing the cup down to the Cape and out to St. Louis. Will have to be two visits anyway. 2 visits, no waiting. 2 parties anyway. I would suspect. No question about that. I got to ask you, since I knew you before when, seeing you play when you were 16 and then getting to know you at BU. So for me, me knowing you predates the nickname. And we had Eddie Olczyk on the show, and he does take credit for the nickname. So just to give us your take on the nickname and how you became Walt, and of course later, appropriately, Big Walt.
Well, you know what? 100% it was Eddie Olczyk. I remember walking into the rink, into the locker room, and he said, "Your new nickname's Walt." I said, "Okay." And then, obviously, because of the Walt Tkachuk of the New York Rangers, and it's stuck ever since. But Eddie O is the reason why it was Walt.
Mm-hmm. And it has come to my attention. I'm not going to reveal my sources, as a good journalist, that you've been tagged with another nickname recently, which I think is very appropriate. If you think about your place as a dad now, second generation in the world of sports, and your progeny, they're calling you Archie now.
Yes, we won't get into who said that, but that was hilarious. I was there laughing. Oh, that's great. That's hilarious.
I mean, who else but Big Walt and Archie can sit there and he could have been at Eli's game and said, Eli just threw an interception. What the hell's Peyton doing in Indianapolis right now? You're the only guy that can do the same thing. I mean, you guys are in a class by yourselves.
The boy's got a long way to go before that for me to be Archie.
Have you ever met Archie? Maybe we can get a photo op with you two at some point. Have you ever met him?
That'd be great.
Yeah. See if we can. The powers of the games people play. We'll have to work on that, and see if we could pull that off. You look back at your style of play, Keith, was distinctive, and look no further than some of the quotes, some of the comments here. When you went into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, Ron Wilson said, "The ultimate power forward, top 5 in history of the game. Brian Burke said, a warrior. Big numbers, mean, played hard, great hands. Pretty impressive combination. Paul Holmgren, big guy, physical, passion, and great hands. As far as your game and how your game evolved, who were some of the influences? Were there any guys in particular that you might have maybe mentored you from afar that you watched growing up that you kind of took elements to make it big Walt's game and to be as successful as you were?
There's a lot that goes into it, Bernie. There's not just one or two people or steps. It's a a ton of steps. I look at get an opportunity to be play with BU and play with great players there and play with great line mates in college. Opportunity to play an NHL schedule the next year with Olympics, getting a skating coach and being able to watch Cam Neely growing up and some of the great forwards like that, playing with great centermen and Craig Janney, even though he's a BC guy, Dougie Wade, Jeremy Roenick, Pavel Dimitra. So, all these things, helped me develop in the way the game changed and skills and, playing with guys who had better skills and, but I always wanted to play that different style and to be able to contribute in other ways and be able to be not a young kid, but a kid who was a teenager seeing Cam Neely, come on the scene for the Bruins and how he, developed that power forward game where he could score, he can create energy. He was tough. And, a guy like that was obviously a big part of why I became the player I did.
And the last 5 years must have been a little bit different in terms of maybe the amount of bumps and bruises he had at the end of the game when some of that stick work was eliminated, when you'd be established in position, I'm sure, and you're just expecting to get two-handed repeatedly. It was a lot different from 05, that last 5 years. It's too bad that didn't happen in about 2000 in terms of you making a living.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the game has changed, and it's hard. I mean, these kids are incredible now, Bernie. You've seen it at BU. You've seen the kids, and there's no more stiffs in the game. These guys can all play, and you better be able to skate. You be able to stick handle. You better be able to be able to play the game and make plays. And it's not just running around and trying to kill guys. It's a complete hockey game. It's a great. That's why I love watching it right now.
Great game to watch, and great game to watch now as we come down the stretch in the playoffs. You mentioned also the whole Boston-St. Louis thing. I mean, you got out to St. Louis, and who do the Patriots play in the Super Bowl? I mean, that was right when you got to St. Louis. It was the St. Louis Rams. It was the beginning of the Patriots' two-decade dynasty. And then, of course, we've got our own story from 2004.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, me. I grew up in Boston. I was, some of the people didn't like it out here, but oh well.
Well, if you remember, you took a considerable amount of heat at Game 3.
Oh yeah.
In 2004, I think you had your Red Sox hat on, and I think they might have I think given Chantel some trouble. And do you remember the night of Game 4 we all met down at Laclede's Landing? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, Scotty Young.
I had to behave because there was a lot of unhappy people. So.
I remember we walked you down, and I had my friend. Do you remember my friend Ralph, the probation officer from Chelsea? Looked like an extra from The Sopranos. Do you remember Ralph?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember we were down the landings.
Yeah. And Ralph's about 6'5", and once again, he could have been, in any Sopranos episode or any of the Godfather or Goodfellas. And I remember we walked down from Laclede's Landing to Busch Stadium, and you said, Ralph, just walk on the outside, just. So it was almost like you had your own bodyguard to get to the stadium that night, That
was great. That was history, That was fun to be a part of that and see that.
It was a festive evening, and then of course last year, I guess the ultimate mixed emotions really for you growing up, the way that obviously as you've talked about in detail as a Bruins fan, and it took I guess Brett Hull singing Gloria off key, and a few other things thrown in to finally win the Stanley Cup. But the experience for you as an adopted member of the St. Louis community and winning the Stanley Cup, that had to be all aside. That had to be pretty special for you.
Yeah, I mean, to be a part of the organization and to see, what happened here in the playoffs and the wait was a long time for a lot of loyal fans and for the city of St. Louis. And, to do it in Game 7, we have a great owner in Tom Stillman, who's the majority owner, and just the people that have been around the organization for a long time, the players, the coaches. It was a phenomenal year being in last place in January to do what the guys did in the playoffs, and then to do it in Game 7 after not being able to close it out in Game 6. And the history of Boston, to do it here, to do it in my hometown of Boston and be on the ice and be able to lift that cup was, it was a big blur. I wish I could remember it a little bit better. It was a blur, and it was just a long night, and it was a great party here for about 3 or 4 days. The parade was ridiculous. It was just celebrating. There was a lot of people that waited a long time for this.
Indeed, very, very gratifying to see that happen. And now you sit back and you've got the opportunity. Once again, they're not home, but you've got the opportunity to not watch one, but two up and coming elite NHL players. More than has it exceeded the wildest dreams of you and Chantel to think of? We got two guys in the show. And they're not fourth liners either. We're not talking about a couple of grinders here. We're talking about a couple of guys that are prominent in both the programs that they're part of. I mean, that's got to be. Once again, the only other guy I could talk to about this is Archie Manning.
Well, we're excited. I mean, I'm getting to live what my parents went through, and as much as we loved having them here, I miss them. But to have one play in the East and one play, out in Calgary, it's fun. This is what we, and then we have a daughter that's playing field hockey, and she's going to Virginia, not next year, the year afterwards. She's a senior in high school. So, we love that our kids play sports, and we love to be a part of it, and we love watching it. And, I can't be more happy for my boys. They put a lot of work in, and, they deserve everything they're getting right now. And it goes by fast, I tell them, so you better enjoy it.
And it was all the way to the NHL. I found it remarkable. The first time they actually played a game against each other was in the NHL. I mean, how great, how crazy is that to think about?
It was great for our family too, up in Ottawa, and my parents were there, and my wife's dad was there, and all our family and friends. A lot of them came up from Boston, a lot from her side of the two. So it was just awesome to watch that. And, we were just, I was more happy for my parents to be able to go through that.
Experience it through their eyes, almost looking through their eyes as to what they experienced. And you mentioned Taryn, your daughter, and I think you're on record. And of course, my flashback, this is what happens when you get old. You can draw on experience. I think you're on record as saying she's the best athlete in the family. Is that accurate?
She's pretty good. She's pretty good, right? But I'm on her a lot. This is the girl who definitely wants to go to college as soon as possible because she's sick of listening to me at the field. Now I know a lot about field hockey, but it was hard to figure out field hockey. Oh my God, there's a lot of rules, Bernie. It's but I love it, and it's fun watching her. And I wish she played basketball. I wish she played everything else because she seems like she can pick it up and go.
Mm-hmm.
And having two older brothers helps too because she was always out in the driveway playing with them. So,
well, her level of toughness has got to be off the charts growing up in the Tkachuk household. I would suspect.
It doesn't matter whether a boy or a girl or young or old. We treat everybody the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I think you're now on a par with the great Lou Amonte, who told me repeatedly. When, Tony would, weaving his magic the 2 years he was at BU, he'd say, Bernie, you don't know the half of it. My daughter's the best. Kelly's the best athlete. Athlete in the family.
She's coaching Northwest lacrosse.
That's right. Lacrosse team. That's right. So once again, you get two guys in the NHL, and my daughter's the best athlete. So, a credit to the job that you've done overall. And you look back, Keith, there was an article, and I'm sure you saw it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention back when everybody around Boston was looking back just a couple of months ago at Bobby Orr flying through the air in the 50th anniversary. Just a great piece by my good friend Kevin DuPont in the Globe about the three Charlestown guys that were on the Bull Gang, named Fitzgerald, Grizzlick, and Tkachuk, all huddled in underneath section 46 at the old stadium seats of the Garden on that day. That was just an unbelievable. I think any hockey person that read that article would say, wow, it does all come full circle for those three guys, and what happened over the next half century. That must have put a smile on your face.
Yeah, it was so cool. Unfortunately, my Uncle Tom is not alive anymore, but he was a great guy, and obviously Grizzy. I remember Grizzy when I was a kid going to watch high school hockey in Massachusetts. The Garden. He was the Zamboni driver, and then my dad. That's where he started. To have those three guys be a part of history, and then have three kids and some grandchildren playing it. How cool is that from three guys from Charlestown who, work at the dock, they're union guys and they're guys who paid their dues and worked hard to get us where we had to go. And we're very, very thankful for them.
I think DuPont's comment was, forget about $10,000 for the next elite hockey summer camp. Get a job on the Bull Gang. That's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you look at it, just to recount, if you're scoring at home, folks, and you're watching, you've got Keith, and your dad had just got back from before you were born, but he was just back from Vietnam then in the Marines, actually, May 1970.
Yeah. He's seen it all, Boston fireman and that, so,
And of course, with you, and now he's got the two grandsons. You've got your cousin Tom Fitzgerald, and I'm not ruling out either of Tom's kids. Unfortunately, as Coach Parker would say, everybody's got to go to school somewhere. They did make the mistake of going to BC, but still, not out of the realm of possibility that those guys will play in the NHL and join, in this case, their second cousins with Matt and Brady, which would be pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. I mean, Matthew played with Casey. Casey's a tough little defenseman who's, stingy, plays well, simple. And Ryan's got a little Matthew in him. He's a feisty guy, plays in the tough areas. So, hey, some guys it takes longer than others. It's not a big deal. It happens. And there's no doubt in my mind they're going to get a shot and they're going to take advantage of it.
Indeed, that would be amazing. And then, well, I can't leave the Mr. Hayes would be upset with me. You also bloodlines to the Hayes boys who both played in the NHL.
Sheila was like a sister to us. She was the best, and that's who married Kevin Hayes. And obviously, it was great seeing Jimmy and Kevin get to have a taste of the NHL. And obviously, Kevin's playing in Philly, who has a good team right now, and signed a nice ticket. And not bad for a couple Dorchester and Charlestown people.
Indeed. And as we wrap up to kind of full circle and another moment in time, and once again, I think somebody is writing this script for you. Not only do you have the opportunity to see your two kids play, obviously before the world ended for us here as we know it, in the NHL All-Star Game, but the NHL All-Star Game happened to be in St. Louis in your hometown. What about I'm sure the madness, the chaotic experience that was having the boys playing in the All-Star Game in their hometown, and what that whole moment was like for you?
That was the last good thing that happened in 2020.
I would say so.
Matthew had a pretty good year, and to get an opportunity to play in an All-Star Game where he grew up on the same ice and watching his dad was we were thrilled for him. He wanted to make it so bad and get to do that. And then Brady had a pretty good year. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but an injury happened and he got the call. And I think he was in the Bahamas somewhere doing tequila shots, I believe, 2 days before he had to play. So he got the call up and, and they both played each other in the championship game. And, got to do the skills competition and then once again from Brady to play in the rink that he grew up practicing on. I used to bring him to the rink, and it was pretty cool, but it was even more cool for my wife and I, and once again, my parents to be able to see that.
Indeed, I think you talked about on Spit and Chicklets about those Tkachuk family gift cards. I'll have to, maybe I'll become eligible. If I can get you on the wall here at the Fours, maybe I'll be eligible.
We got to get those kids off the gift card. They make more than me now.
Absolutely. And, I always try to make the guests feel at home. And I did wear, I got the BU jersey on to make you feel at home here.
Not a better jersey, man. Not a better jersey, Bernie. That's
absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, they did this T-shirt a number of years ago with the road to the NHL. And
wow.
Of course, yep. And of course, you're on there with all the boys that have made it to that point. You mentioned about being retired and being in St. Louis. I don't think quite ready for the rocking chair, but and of course the last good thing. And there's a picture from Better Times, Keith. There's you and I at the Bavis tournament going back a few years ago.
Is that a Greg Galvin?
Yeah, I was going to say, did Galvin win?
Hey, we had some good times with him at BU my freshman year.
Absolutely, he was the straw that stirred the drink, as Reggie Jackson would say. He was social director.
He is that. He was social director. I think he got kicked me out of a couple places.
That's right, collateral damage. But among the many events that we hope and we long for in 2021 is and I know you've been very active and very supportive of your former teammate and fallen teammate in 9/11 and the great work that the Bavis Foundation and that's been an annual event for you, and always great to see you down there. We can only hope that next July we'll all be there again, Keith.
Yeah, the Bavis they're great to me, both Mark and Mike, and terrible thing, but we celebrated every time down New Seabury. Great family. We miss Mark a lot, but it's great. It's nice to see everybody pull together and do something nice for their family.
And we look forward to that in 2021 and getting you back to Boston and getting you back over the bridge down to Sandwich and back on the Cape here, and that we'll have somewhat of a return to normalcy, and that you and I won't be having this virtual experience, but we might actually, have a beverage together as we have a couple of times in the past.
Absolutely, Bernie. Well, good. Thanks for having me, and always a pleasure, buddy.
Indeed. Well, the games people play with Keith Tkachuk. You played well today, and my only postscript is you played with guys like Phil Housley and Timo Solani, Paul Kariya, Al McGinnis. It all ended for them in Toronto, and I suspect that I'm going to look in the crystal ball. I'm going to play Nostradamus, and I'm going to say that it's not over yet, Keith. It's going to end in Toronto for you someday, my friend.
I appreciate it, Bernie. Thank you very much.
Keith Tkachuk, our guest here, we thank him for joining us on the Games People Play. He certainly played well with us today, as we suspected that he would. And I just want to thank everybody that makes the Games People Play possible. My executive producer, Andy Bernstein, for Todd and Kiwan out in Seattle and all of their support. And, of course, for everybody here at the Fours with Peter Colton, Jimmy Taggart, Gino, and the rest of the staff here at the Fours for making this our home away from home. Dare I say, at our studio now, Andy, that we moved up to the second floor. And we've got an assignment now. We got to get, I don't know what jersey it'll be, maybe a BU number 24. We're going to work on getting that Tkachuk jersey up in the rafters here at the Fours, up on the wall in the Hall of Fame. So thanks once again, and we look forward to joining you again on the Games People Play. And until then, Bernie Corbett saying, play the game well.